In 2023, Anthony Joshua had 3 fights. He hasn't had 3 fights in a calendar year in a long time. In fact, I think the last time he had 3 fights in a calendar year was 2016 in his first reign as IBF champion. Beat Charles Martin, beat Dominic Brazil, beat Eric Molina. I think that's the last time because he had Klitschko and Takam 17, he had Parker Povetkin 18, he had Ruiz twice in 19, one in 22, one in 21, and one in 2020. So it's been a while since he had 3 fights in the calendar year, and they were seen as rebuilding fights. And in many ways, you could argue that each fight was a step up. Now, I know some people are going to say, gee, how could you say Helenius was a step up? Well, he wasn't the original opponent, to be fair. He wasn't the original opponent. It went Franklin, the guy who lost to Dylan White. It was meant to be Dylan White, who was missing in action, right? But we obviously know why. And Helenius came in as a late replacement. So, they had the intention to step him up with Dylan White. It didn't obviously happen. And then obviously Otto Wallin towards the back end of the year, which was the easiest fight out of all of them. Even though on paper you definitely would say Otto Wallin out of those two names, Franklin and Helenius, was the hardest. It was the easiest. So we saw Joshua by the end of the year look a lot better. The activity was definitely a big help. He's now working with Ben Davison. Many people believe that's a revelation working with him now. Let's wait and see. But definitely he looked good in there against Otto Wallin. Now, going into 2024, and obviously it's January 1st, 2024, people are asking, what's next? What's going to happen with him? Now, Warren has teased, Frank Warren, that March the 9th, there is going to still be a big card on that day. Whether Joshua's on it, we don't know. Who's going to be on it, we don't know. That was the original date for Wilder versus Joshua, provided they both won. Joshua won, Wilder didn't, right? As is always the way. You make the fight in the future and both guys have to get through it, and you're like, oh, that's a recipe for disaster right there. You think people would learn their lesson, but no. Anyway, Warren is talking about that date. Will Joshua be on it? Who knows? But he is a man who definitely has options this year, but he's also a man that people are definitely lining up to fight. We've already heard Zil Zang call his name. Frank Warren saying that potentially, his guy Dubois is there to fight Anthony Joshua. He will, if it hasn't happened already, which I would expect it'll probably happen in the next few days, when the rankings are released for the month of January. Anthony Joshua will definitely usurp Otto Wallin in the rankings. He'll probably be in there at number 2 in the rankings, which would then mean if the IBF title gets vacant, which we expect it to happen after Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury, whoever wins, we expect it to be vacant, he will then be in line to fight for that vacant title, become a 3-time heavyweight champion of the world. So there's a lot in 2024 for Anthony Joshua. 2023 was seen as a comeback, a bit of a rebuilding year, and you could argue, given how he looked against Otto Wallin, by the end of the year, he had rebuilt sufficiently. He looked a lot better, didn't look gun shy, looked to have more confidence, just seemed to be looking a bit like his old self in there, which is obviously a good thing because we want Joshua firing on all cylinders because we can be in good fights. So now that year is ticked off, the kind of rehabilitation is kind of seen as done, we're looking at these big fights against these big names. Dubois versus Joshua, that's a really good fight. I know Warren is saying it, but would he really go down that road already with Dubois, following on from that loss to Usyk and then that good win against Miller? Would he really just go straight back in and put him in a fight like that? Questions got to be asked there. Zil Zang is a very interesting fight. It's a flippin' interesting fight. I know they met in the amateurs. Zil Zang is having what would you even call it? Is it even an Indian summer? Because he never really had a prime per se in his career. He obviously fought Filip Hrgovic. Many people felt that he won the fight. He gets brought in as an opponent for Joe Joyce, which was for a guy who's mandatory for the WBO, that's a really tough, just kind of in-between fight. Really tough. And obviously, Zil Zang upset Joe Joyce. And then he didn't upset him the second time, he obliterated him. So Zil Zang is a man, who's riding the quest of a wave. He's looking at Anthony Joshua. And Zil Zang, that guy is powerful as F. I mean, he is powerful. So Zil Zang riding the quest of a wave. But of course, the main one would be Filip Hrgovic. And it'd probably be the easiest for a variety of reasons. One of is that Hrgovic is with Sauerland, but he's also with Matchroom. So it was a co-promotional kind of thing. You've got Kella Sauerland and Eddie Hearn. You know, they have a very good relationship. They've had it for years. That's easy. Joshua Matchroom, Hrgovic, Matchroom / Sauerland. Easy fight. Easy 1, 2, 3. Add the caveat of having an IBF title on the line. There you go. Joshua Hrgovic, world title fight. Pay-per-view. There you go. No questions asked. Seriously, no questions asked. You could do it in the UK. Would they probably would try and do it in Saudi because of the Saudi money, the Saudi involvement, the fact that both guys have fought over there several times now, and you know they want that bag. Of course, and you know they could do it in the UK, but they will get more money in Saudi, definitely, 100%. But that to me is the most likely fight for Joshua next. I'd be very surprised if they took a Zil Zang fight because, yeah, like you know you're gaining an interim title. You're not gaining the full title. An interim title is... So it's better to be interim champion than be mandatory, you know, in one sense, because it means then if a champion vacates, you don't have to fight anyone else. You just get made full champion. But, you know, you're fighting for a vacant title. So that to me makes more sense. Plus, many people would feel as though Zil Zang, although he officially lost to Hrgovic, is a more dangerous fight. Because Hrgovic hasn't looked good in his last 2 performances. We'll discount the Mark Demori fight because that was just the... Yeah, we know about that. We'll discount that. Listen, just discount that one. But Dempsey McKean and Zil Zang didn't look good in those fights. Didn't look particularly good against Zil Zang. He had a lot going on in his personal life. He lost his father, which, you know, obviously that will affect you. And Zhang being better than we thought, okay, that's fine. We'll give him a pass on that one. But he looked even worse against Dempsey McKean. That really isn't good. Dempsey McKean is not a good heavyweight. So, based upon those performances, him against Joshua, I'd be favouring Joshua. Because at least Joshua's been looking better as of late. Hrgovic, I mean, I don't even know. I think he's too heavy for one, and is the motivation even there? It's a good question. I think that's a more realistic fight. For Dubois, what do you have to gain from it? If you're Anthony Joshua, there's no title on the line. If you are looking to become heavyweight champion this year, what do you really gain beating Dubois at this point? Or fighting Dubois? Maybe not necessarily beating him, because God knows what could happen. It's heavyweight boxing. But what do you gain from fighting him? You know, again, if it's in Saudi, yeah, you get a nice payday. But if you want to be champion, well, Dubois is not mandatory for any of the titles. He's not got an interim title. Would he might have a high-ish ranking with some of the sanctioning bodies following on from that Miller win. But, like, what else is he going to... He's not going to bring anything else to the table. So, for me, out of those names I mentioned, the Hrgovic fight, for me, is the only real fight that makes sense for Anthony Joshua from a variety of reasons. Some would say maybe if they're looking to do that March the 9th date, maybe they could do Joshua versus Parker 2. Yeah, it's possible. But again, you know, if you are looking to become champion this year, why would you fight guys who, you know, yeah, they could be highly ranked, but if a vacant title becomes vacant and you're in a position to fight for it and you want to be champion, why would you say, well, I'm going to fight this guy for a high ranking, but there's a belt there? You know, that's my thinking behind it. I also think that depending on the winner of Fury Usyk, basically if it's Fury, that fight could be there. That fight I think will always be there. But I think if Fury beats Usyk and say the rematch doesn't happen, Fury Joshua definitely I think is going to happen. If the rematch with Usyk doesn't, if Usyk decides, do you know what, that's me done, thank you boxing, see you later, I don't need the rematch, then I think we'll see Fury Joshua at some point in the next year, 18 months. And I would 100% be sure about that. I genuinely would. I think that if Joshua picks up an IBF title, or even if he just keeps winning, and Fury beats Alexander Usyk, I think we'd see that fight. I think the money on offer for that fight would be insane. I definitely think we'd see that fight, 100%. If Usyk wins, I mean, Eddie Hearn can say what he wants about like Joshua being back at number 1. Listen, he's been schooled twice by Alexander Usyk, and people, you know, look at that performance against Oliver Lean and say, oh, maybe he's been schooled twice by Usyk. That style of Usyk's will always cause Joshua problems. Doesn't matter what Ben Davison says or who's in the corner. That style will always cause Joshua problems. And Alexander Usyk has fought 24 rounds with Joshua, and he's won probably... Listen, he's lost rounds, but in terms of like the first fight, you could probably argue Joshua won 2-3 rounds, and maybe he won 3, maybe 4 rounds in the second fight. So out of 24 rounds, Joshua has won, what, 7 rounds? Yeah, I'd be still favouring Alexander Usyk heavily if that fight happens. But that's just my 2 cents on everything. Joshua in 2024, a man with many options. Many options. What way do you think it's going to go for him? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Lads, as always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. But for now, I will leave you with that.